Now, a couple of weeks ago I revealed to you that I am making a beginner's woodworking course, and I also asked you what would you like to learn in a course like that. So many of you replied that you want to hear about how to prepare wood, so I decided to upload this part for free. Now, as always, there are many ways of doing this, but this is the method that I have been using for a couple of years now, and it works really well for me, so I hope that you will find this helpful. So, preparing wood really means to go from rough lumber to a piece that is pretty smooth, square, straight, has the right length and the right thickness. And there are three ways that you can do this. It's either to do it yourself with a planer and jointer, or you can do it yourself with a hand plane, or you could ask the guys at the lumber store where you buy a lumber to help you out. Now, if you are a beginner and you don't have a planer or jointer, I would recommend the last option because it's very tricky to plane and joint boards by hand. Now, you don't necessarily have to plane and joint lumber in order to use it. For instance, if you buy construction grade lumber, there are a ton of cool projects that you can make without any preparations. But you will find that if you buy lumber, and especially rough lumber, they will often be warped, not straight, very rough, and therefore it will be very tricky to get tight joints. But as I said, you can make a ton of cool projects without planing and jointing. So now let's take a look at option 1, which is to do it yourself with a planer and jointer. Step number 1 is to joint one of the faces of the board. This side of board is the face side, and as well as the opposite side. It can sometimes be hard to figure out what is the face side of the board, especially if you have a square board. But in that case, it doesn't really matter what side you joint first. Which one of the face sides you joint first doesn't make a difference, but you want to choose the side that is most stable on the jointer. Make sure the whole face of the board is jointed, which basically means that it's flat. Remember to always use a push stick on the back. You can also use a pencil to make it easier to check if the whole face is jointed. Step number 2 is to square one of the sides to the face jointed side. First check that the fence is square, then put the face jointed side up against the fence and start joining until you have a perfectly square corner. Now that you have a jointed face and an edge that is square to that face, it's safe to make a cut on the table saw, which is step number 3. This is to remove as much wood as possible before planing the face that is not flat. Now we have an edge that should be square to the jointed face and parallel to the opposite edge. The last step is to plane the face that is not jointed. Then we put the face jointed side down and run through the planer, taking light passes. The planer will make sure that the thickness is the same across the whole board. Do this until you have a flat, even surface. Again, you can use a pencil to make some marks to make sure that you get the whole face flat. Now the second option is to do all of this by using a hand plane. And I have actually never prepared rough lumber using a hand plane, so I'm definitely not an expert, but I know that the process is the same. You start out by planing one of the face sides, making sure that it's perfectly flat. Once you've done that, you square one of the edges to the face side that you've planed, and then you cut the opposite side, either using a table saw or a track saw or hand saw, and make sure that it's nice and square in parallel to the opposite edge. And then finally you want to plane the final side, making sure that it's square to both edges, parallel to the opposite face, and has an even thickness all across the board. Now, doing this by hand is a difficult process, but there are many good videos out on YouTube, so I recommend to go and check those out. And just because I have not been able to learn this yet, I haven't really tried, but you can still be able to learn this if this is the only option that you've got. And then the last option is to ask for help at the lumberyard where you buy your lumber. And this is a lot easier in USA than it is here in Norway. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but if you can't get any help from the lumber store or lumberyard, I'm sure you can find some local woodworker or furniture maker that can help you out. And it's probably a good idea to offer him a little bit of money.
And now all that remains is to cut the board to its final length.
Now I should say that it's probably even smarter to cut the board to length right after you've cut it to the right width, so that you don't run the risk of planing more than you need on the final planing. So I hope you found this helpful. As I said, this will also be a part of the woodworking course, where I'll go in even more details about this topic. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.